Leadership isn't revealed during easy seasons. It's revealed during difficult decisions, hard conversations, moments of uncertainty, and the beliefs that shape how leaders respond when the stakes are high. Welcome to the Lead Up Podcast. I'm your host, Mike Harbour. And each week, we go beyond titles, accomplishments, and career highlights to explore the thinking that drives exceptional leadership. Together, we examine the decisions behind the decisions, the beliefs behind the behaviors, and the lessons leaders learn through challenge, growth, and transformation. To do that, on today's episode, I have with me from the Chicago Cubs' historic World Series victory, Josh Lifrak. Josh has written a new book called Win Today. Josh is a mental performance coach, and he helps leaders and organizations perform at their best under pressure. Really excited to dive into this topic, Josh. I talk about mindset and leadership a lot on the Lead Up Podcast. Welcome to the show.
Thanks so much, Mike. Really just an absolute pleasure to be here. Excited to get into it with you, man.
Yeah, this is going to be fun. I'm looking forward to talking because I'm a believer that everything we do in life, 90% of everything we do is mindset and how we think about stepping into it, from having a podcast conversation to having a hard conversation with someone on our team, to leading our kids, to performing on the golf course. Yesterday was the finals of the U.S. Open. Wyndham Clark won his second U.S. Open, and he had some pressure. One, he went into the day with a 7-stroke lead, but he also had some pressure from the crowd. People kind of yelling at him because maybe they don't like him. They like Scheffler, who I love as well. What a phenom he is. But so Wyndham had torn up a clubhouse a year ago because he failed at this tournament. So he's bringing this extra burden of outside chance at him. Maybe not hoping he failed, but really hoping Scotty would win. And I was just impressed at how he handled that pressure in his mindset. They even highlighted his performance coaches during that tournament. I don't know if you watched any of that, but let's talk about what does it take to perform the best at the best level over and over again.
Yeah, you just kind of said it over and over again. That's the key. Consistency happens through consistent preparation. And I think when you're talking about the PGA, the LPGA, that level of golfer, there is a real focus on not only working on their swing path, not only working on the tactics of the course, not only working on chipping and putting, but there's a real focus for those athletes at the highest levels to work on thinking about what they're thinking and work on the thoughts that they can have. We often talk about E plus R equals O, the event plus your response equals the outcome. Responses occur in space and in time. Reactions occur immediately. And so one of the things that these elite athletes do is they train their responses so well that they become reactions. In other words, if you and I triple bogey a hole and we're all frustrated and we're mad because we missed that 5-foot putt, the double bogey, they've already got a plan in place that shifts them into a different mindset. If I've already missed that, if I missed that birdie putt, if I missed that, boom, okay, here's what I think. And so they know already. So it's a reaction. And the reaction is often to get grounded, to be neutral, to think about what they have to do to make the next putt. Because every great golfer knows the key to golf is to make the best out of the shot that's at your feet. That's the key. How do I make the best out of this shot? Regardless of how I got here, regardless of what my scorecard says, the only shot that matters is the one that's right at my feet right now. So how do I absolutely make the best out of that? And again, the best out of the best, they've trained that. They've trained their minds to react out of a response.
Yeah, it's real interesting, right? Because these guys are all highly skilled, highly capable. Many of the leaders I work with in the healthcare space that I do work in are highly capable, highly educated, smart. I had a coach tell me once when I kind of started the self-development journey myself and started investing in coaching myself to get better as an entrepreneur, to grow my business. I had a coach tell me once, Mike, you'll never be able to outperform your own self-belief. So we can have skill, right? When you have skill, you take a baseball player, we're going to dive into your experience with the Cubs. Take an athlete or a leader, have all the credentials on the wall, the education, the experience. But how does their self-belief show up in those moments, especially under stress? And why is it so important to understand that we can never outperform our own self-belief?
Yeah, I could do hard things, right? Like I just keep thinking about that phrase as you're talking about. I can do hard things. I always find a way. right? These are beliefs. These are beliefs. So how do you get to those beliefs? Sometimes it's just by experience. Sometimes again, it's your preparation. You've been through tough times. You've trained in tough times, and then you can get through it. But then I think also too, when you think about that belief system, where does it come from? Oftentimes it's influenced. It's not controlled. There's a big difference between control and influence, right? But it can be influenced by what's outside of you, right? What's the phrase? You're the summation of the 5 people that you spend the most time with, right?
Right.
So thinking that, just let's step out of that for a second. What kind of things are you allowing into your life? One of the things I talk about in Win Today, the book that just came out here early June, is negativity. And if I'm surrounding myself or I'm bombarded with negativity, my emotional wherewithal, my emotional bank is going to get depleted. And so I'm not going to have enough strength left because I'm exhausted by it to respond in a really powerful, positive manner. In other words, if I'm sitting there and I'm flipping on the news and I'm just watching the news all day, like it's funny, the World Cup's going on right now, Mike, right? And you're hearing
Mhm.
all this. I don't know if you've been following it, but one of the coolest things about the World Cup is people coming to visit our amazing country.
Yeah.
And they have said over and over again, if you watch the news, you will hate America. If you visit America, you will absolutely freaking love it. And
Mm.
so it's what are you putting into your body? What are you ingesting? A lot of times I work with a company called Limitless Minds. We're a mindset consultancy company. We work with major pharmaceuticals like Johnson and Johnson and Novartis, AbbVie, just to name a few, McDonald's, Amazon. And one of the things that we always talk about with anybody that we're consulting with is let's do a negativity audit. Let's
Mm.
just let's take a step back and see how much negativity you're letting in your life. Let's look at your text messages. Are you putting that poop emoji and that thumbs down left and right? How much time are you spending on social media comparing yourself to others? How much time are you reading how we're about to end up in World War III again and there's nuclear bombs going to be and negativity, right? Or how much the flip side of that is how much gratitude do you have in your life? Who are you leaning into? Who's supporting you? Who's lifting you up? Who's leading you up? Right? All those types of things. So I think that's a big part of it.
Yeah, so good. I'm a big fan of old literature. James Allen wrote a book called As a
Yeah.
Man Thinketh in 1902. Sounds like you're
So here
familiar
we
with it. But
go.
in the book, there's a quote. He says, "Man's mind is likened to a garden, which may be intelligently cultivated or allowed to run wild, but whether cultivated or neglected, it must and it will bring forth." So that ties into kind of what are you watching, right? What are you listening to? What are you feeding into your mind? Who are you hanging out with? So let's move into the leadership conversation. It's easy to talk about this when it comes to sports, right? I want to talk about the Cubs for a minute, even though it's sports. There's a leadership job that had to take place first, right? And
Yeah.
to get the Cubs to believe that they could get the monkey off their back, so to speak, and win the World Series. So let's talk about the leadership mindset and transformation that had to occur and then be transferred into the employees, the players, if you will.
Yeah. So we were lucky enough to have a president named Theo Epstein. Theo Epstein was named by Forbes magazine the #1 leader in the world. So pretty good stat. He was the GM of the Boston Red Sox when the Boston Red Sox were able to overcome a 3-0 deficit to the New York Yankees and break an 86-year streak of not winning the World Series. And
Moneyball, right? Moneyball.
well, Moneyball was
Moneyball.
the A's. That was the
Okay.
A's.
Okay.
But
Sorry.
he came from that organization originally.
Gotcha.
So one of the things we had the Red Sox had the curse of the Bambino. They had the curse of Babe Ruth because they had traded him for basically theater, an opportunity to put on a theater show. So by Babe Ruth, and they were able to overcome that. So he was our president, and so he had been there, done that. Number one. Number two was one of the things that he did was he made sure that we were doing things that champions do. So in the Cubs Way manual, which I helped write, and this is actually in Tom Verducci's great book, The Cubs Way. There's a section in there in the Cubs Way manual about how we're going to win the World Series. And basically it says we're going to be champions. In order to be champions, you have to be champions first in everything that you do, in your mindset and how you run to first base, on how you process outs, on how you lose, how you win, how you eat, how you sleep, how you work out, how you stretch, how you recover. all of these things, we have to be champions in all of these little things, and then we'll be champions of the world. And we wrote that in 2014. We had finished DFL, right? So we finished last that year. And
I know what DFL stands for. Well,
there you go, man. I didn't know if the listeners did. There you go. So that's when we wrote that we were going to be champions. And then sure enough, 2 years later, we were lifting the trophy. But it does stem with how you view yourself. What's the identity that you want to show up with? And one of the things that Theo did, which was amazing, was down in Mesa, Arizona. We had $100 million brand new spring training facility built. And in the gym, which is where the weight room is and all that stuff, he put every single banner the Cubs had won since 1906 or 1904. And when you thought about the Cubs in 2014, you thought this is a loser organization, lovable losers. They're cool, they're classy, they're fun. You go and you drink in left field, but they're not winners. And you walked into that weight room and you saw all of these banners from everything that they had won, which was division titles and this championship and this minor league championship, whatever. And it was a ton of them. And it made you think, hey, wait a second, this organization wins. And so as soon as you start thinking like that, boom, then it can take off.
Yeah, I love that. You said it begins with thinking like a champion. And as I said, as we start, I believe everything begins with our thinking, right? Our behaviors follow our thinking, then our habits follow our behaviors. And it's the Cubs way or this company's way. How did so you talked about Theo Epstein, which I love about him. Wasn't even thinking about him, but you've got the GM and then you've got the head coach transferring that belief, right? Because sometimes we have to borrow others' belief in us or each other, right? So what was the concept of belief transferal to our players? Because it has to, you're dealing with young men, right? Even though these players are professional athletes, they're young men. They're still, many of them in their 20s. But when they come there, they're still trying to prove they're good enough, right? And maybe even trying to prove to themselves they're good enough before they can even believe that winning a championship is possible. So talk about the process of the leader, the head coach, transferring that belief into the players who may not believe it, or maybe they're there to earn their paycheck and not really believe that a championship is possible.
Yeah, that's a great question. The reality is it happened way before these players ever got to the major league level. So within the construct of baseball is you have a development system. It's called the minor leagues, and there's different levels. There's A ball, there's rookie ball, there's high A, there's double A, there's triple A, and then there's the major leagues. If you even go back further, there's the Dominican Republic and the summer leagues, right? So we'll have a guy in our system 3, 4, 5 years sometimes before they make it to the major leagues. And one of the things you get to do in the minor leagues is you get to train them. Right. Because listen, it's awesome if the Tennessee Smokies win the Southern League title, but ultimately, meh. You know what I mean? It's ultimately, this is a league about development. And so one of the things that we did was right off the bat, anybody that came into our system, anybody that came into the Cubs system was indoctrinated from a mindset standpoint. And one of the phrases that we had was when it happens. This was developed by our field coordinator, a guy named Tim Cousins, who's now with the Houston Astros, amazing coach. And his thought process was when it happens, because it's going to happen, A, but B, when it happens, what kind of choices are you going to make? And that was a call to action of, hey, when it happens, there's 2 outs, but there's a man on second base and we're only up 1 run. What are you going to think about? What are you going to do? When it happens, you're out drinking with your buddies and somebody hands you the keys to drive home. What are you going to do when it happens? So it was like this call to action throughout the whole thing. But that when it happens vibe underneath, it was almost like this unsaid subconscious thing of, hey, when it happens, when we win this thing, what are you going to be doing? How are you going to be a part of it? How are you going to help? And it was like this subconscious confidence underneath there. And then we had that plastered everywhere, all over the weight rooms and different places. But the other thing that happened too was we had the youngest team in the history of Major League Baseball to win the World Series. Average age was under 26 years old. And so all these young guys, they didn't know what they didn't even know. But what they did know was what we had taught them and what the veterans on that team that had won World Series already had already taught them too. And so that was part of it too. We had quality veterans in there who had been there and done that, putting their arms around these young guns that were coming up, saying, "Hey, here's how you do this. Here's what we think about here. Don't worry about it. This is gonna go here." And so that was a really big part of it too. It was leadership from within of our so there was the minor leagues where we're training the guys, we're teaching them how to run, teaching them how to throw, we're teaching them how to think, we're teaching them how to believe in each other, teaching them how to be great teammates, all that kind of stuff. We're teaching them how to be great men, right? One of our philosophies was better people make better Cubs.
And
So we're going to
that's
train you to be a better person. And one of the things we had a framework. One of our rules was we were not allowed to have D bags on our team. If you were a D bag, you were gone. And literally, you could count on your hands out of the 300 players that we had in our system, somebody that will fall into that category. And typically, by mid-season of that year, they found themselves either cut or on another team.
yeah.
You know,
But to lead up listeners, D-bag is a toxic employee or a low performer. Well, for the non-sports listener here today, we talk about that a lot here on the Lead Up podcast, Josh, dealing with toxic employees and toxic attitudes
Nothing, hey,
and low
Mike, nothing gets
performers.
rid of a great employee faster than keeping a bad employee around.
Amen. Amen. So let's transfer into the corporate, out of the sports world into the corporate world. You wrote a book called Win Today. What's the thesis behind it? Why the book? Why the title? Why is it good for leaders today?
So I came up with the book during COVID because at that time I didn't know what tomorrow was going to bring at all. I was working for the New York Mets then, and we literally didn't know if we were going to have a job the next day, pretty much until they announced the season, which was way beyond when the season should have started. So we just didn't even know. And so my whole thing was like, how do I just win today? That's all I got to win. I was laughing because Fast and the Furious is doing I live my life a quarter mile at a time, right? It's fine. How do I win today? It's just like, I just want to win right here, what's right in front of me. And so it goes back to the golf thing. Play the shot that's at your feet. So this is the day I got. How do I win today? And so I went back and I really looked at all the stuff that I had been around, I've been a part of 17 different championship teams. And I looked at that and I said, hey, and the NCAA level, the high school level, and in the professional world. And I said, hey, what lessons am I learning from them? What are the things that they're doing in order to win this day right in front of them? And what I realized quickly was, in terms of the mental side, there are really 6 easy things that you can do on a daily basis. Not that you can think or not that you can hope, or actual tangible stuff that you can do. And these 6 things, when you do them day in and day out, you're going to win today, but also you're going to have a little bit more resilience. You're going to lean towards peak performance more often, and you're also going to be thriving in your life. And so once I kind of recognized that, I said, I do a lot of speaking engagements, whatever. And one of the things that happens at the end of the speech is, hey, do you have a book? Do you have a book? Do you have a book? So I was like, all right, I got to do this. People are asking. So I wrote the book, and really it just kind of lays out 6 different steps that you can do on a daily basis. And talk about winning. What's winning is you have more points than the other person has, right? So winning today, you do 4 out of the 6, you got a better chance of winning.
That's good. So let's give the listeners a couple of those to think about today. And then what I want to challenge you to do, Lead Up listeners, is go grab a copy of Josh's book. Josh, I don't know if the book is on Amazon yet, but
yeah, it's on Amazon. It's on Barnes and Nobles. If you're in England, it's on Waterstones, whatever.
Yeah, we'll make sure we link to it in the show notes, listeners. But give listeners a couple of those habits that you think, maybe the most important 2 habits that they should be performing on a daily basis right now.
And we're talking about leaders, so the first 2 are going to be really impactful for them. The first thing is this: are you living your life by default, or are you living your life by design? And you get that choice as a human being, right? As a human being, we get a choice of how we're going to go about it every day. So the first thing that I talk about in the book is define your story. Decide how you're going to be every day. And if you can do that, if you can kind of get your mind at that place of just decision, I'm going to be fun. I'm going to be energetic. I'm going to be focused. I'm going to be curious. I'm going to be productive. Whatever it might be, you get to choose that. Okay. But here's the thing. When I was just giving a talk for 2,000 people, and I asked the crowd, I said, how many of you on a daily basis set an intention and decide who you're going to be for that day? What do you think? It was probably, I don't know,
20% maybe, if you're lucky.
If I'm lucky, more like 10%, right? And when you ask those 10% what their intentions are, they're actually goals. I'm going to sell 15 units or whatever it is, right?
Mhm.
So it's like, it's not a goal, it's the intention. So you can use your goals to set your intentions. Hey, I want to sell X amount of the product. Okay. Then how do I have to be in order to do that? I have to be bold. I have to be courageous. I have to be curious. I have to be engaged, whatever it might be. But now you can inform that. But you get to choose who you're going to be. When you choose who you're going to be, what you're going to do is going to follow that. And what you do is going to get you your results. So that's the big key. Being, doing, having.
Yeah.
So that's
Yeah,
that's
we
the first one.
Yeah, look, that's really good. And I think it's important for our listeners to understand is that you have to be before you can have, right?
Yeah, you do.
And your being determines how you do what you do. But a lot of people just say, I got to do this, I got to do that. But if we carry the same core beliefs into our doing, we're going to get the same results, right? That's insanity, as we all know. And this is basically what Josh is teaching us here. If you continue to you want something different in your life, but if you continue to do it based on your same old belief system that's gotten you right where you are, you're going to get the same results. So I love that. And creating this intention. We all use this tool today, Josh, called a GPS. And the first thing we do is we put our intention into that, right? Where do I want to end up?
Destination.
Why don't we lead our day that way? So I love that. Create your desire, create your intention.
Yeah. I call it define your story.
Define your story. Love that.
Define your story.
The story
Decide
you
and
want
write
to tell
that down.
today.
So that's the first thing. And then, okay, now I've done that. One of the biggest things that I've seen, especially for leaders and especially for high performers, is they are surrounded by really good people. And I think I'm still trying to pick my brain on this. I'm sure there's an example of somebody doing something really magical and really impactful and powerful alone, but I haven't found it yet. I haven't found it. You're always doing something with somebody else. And no matter what you're up to, if you enlist others into it, if you build bonds, that's the second part of the thing. If you build those bonds and you cultivate them and you create great relationships, then you're gonna go far. Right. If you want to
Mm.
go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. And so that's the big key for me, I think, in terms of a thriving life, in terms of winning today, making sure you're connecting with others. We don't want to live in a silo. Maybe if you're Ralph Waldo Emerson and you're sitting out in the woods and you're writing stuff, whatever, I get it. But a lot of times it's really important to have that connection.
Yeah, so good. And I think we have to battle some myths in life when it comes to that. Is you got my head spinning on some things I hadn't really talked about in a while, but believe there's an old saying, it's not what you know, it's who you know.
Yep.
But too many people in life go around thinking, I don't know anybody. I don't know the right thing. I always use my own story as an example, Josh. I grew up in a very dysfunctional home. I wasn't a country club kid. I didn't have a silver spoon in my mouth. There was lots of dysfunction, violence in my home. And for a long time, I was like, my dad didn't know anybody. My parents didn't know anybody. As a matter of fact, no one wanted to know them, right? And so I used it as an excuse for a long time. Luckily, I got away from home and I began to surround myself with better people. And I've shared the stage with John Maxwell, with Les
Yeah.
Brown before, because I started putting myself into places where I could get to know people. That's part of this podcast is me doing life with you today, sharing bits and pieces about your book that hopefully is going to get some book sales for you, but also expand my audience a little bit because some of your audience is going to get to know Mike Harbour and the Lead Up podcast a little bit too. And I think, again, this is the law of reciprocation, right? We both get something out of this. And we can do that in leadership too. I'm going to learn a lesson from somebody around the table. Okay, I'm trying to bring it right to leadership now. As leaders, you don't have to have all the answers. You don't have to be the smartest person in the room. You're smarter together. You're better together, as Josh taught us there. So I just wanted to kind of bring that lesson home for our listeners here.
Yeah. It's just,
Josh.
it is. But also, too, it's like you just get more out of life when you're leaning into others.
Yeah.
When you lift
Yeah.
others up, like my company's called Lift Up. That's what it's
Mm.
about, man. You lift others up, you lean into them, you lead up. But man, great things start happening and your life starts changing. You just get a lot of energy. It just kind of comes back to you. And I don't know. That's just kind of my
Yeah.
philosophy is just help others. Why not?
Yeah, love it. So you write about a concept called the mile zero or called
Yeah.
mile zero in your book. What is mile zero and how does it help leaders avoid complacency?
Yeah. So I don't know if you've ever been to Key West, Florida, but that's where
Never
I
been.
kind of came up with the concept. Key West is a place where you go and you'll have a lot of fun and you probably won't remember a lot of it.
I know what you're talking about.
Maybe akin to New Orleans, right? But there's a mile marker there, and it's mile 0. I saw it years ago, and it's the end of Route 1, or is it the beginning of Route 1? I don't know. It's just
Yeah.
mile 0. One of the things that kind of hit me, and I was like, mile 0, that's like about a reset, man. That's like about getting back to absolutely nothing and then going forward again. So a lot of people think the past is predictive of the future, and I'm here to tell you it's not. The past is not predictive of the future. What is predictive of the future is what you think and what you do in the here and now. All
So
right.
good.
That's going to be predictive of your future. So a mile 0 is a call to action to get back to nothing. Hey, we have all this stuff, whatever, but this is where I am right now. Again, going back to the golf analogy, the ball is at my feet, mile 0. There's nothing before, there's nothing after. It's just at my feet. So how do I make the best out of this shot that's right here? Same kind of thing. Same kind of thing for leaders as well. Hey, it's Wednesday. This is what we've gone through Monday and Tuesday. It's June 23rd, 24th, whatever it is. We're at this point in this quarter. Great. This is where I am. How do I move forward? That's it. So mile 0 is like an erasure. And it helps. One of the things that we talk about, I talk about in Stop the Storm, which is another chapter there, is about getting to neutral. And this is a concept that was brought up and created by Limitless Minds, the company I work with. And that is all about dealing with the concrete and objective facts without judging and grading. Because that's what we do as human beings. We jump right to judgment. We jump right to story. We point fingers. We do this, we do that. But if I could just take the facts, here's where I am. And now I can move forward. Oof, that's huge. And mile 0 helps us get to that.
Yeah, that's so good. Can we go tactical just a minute on
Sure.
that? So I work with healthcare leaders.
Yeah.
Healthcare, you live in the States, you get it. Healthcare is a mess right now in the US. It's too expensive. Staffing shortages are everywhere. We're running out of doctors. We're running out of nurses. And so I spend a lot of my time trying to get leaders to just think differently. We can no longer do healthcare the way we've always done it, right? As far as the mindset and the thinking. And it's a huge endeavor to change it because you got politics involved, right? You got insurance, you got pharmaceuticals, you got these big mammoth companies that have a lot of control in that. And so I'm just trying to play the ball at my feet, right? These single organizations that I work with, if we can get to change the mindset and the thinking in there. And so when you think about that, Josh, you've worked with big organizations, big companies, big teams. What's the advice you would give to the CEO right now that may be stuck in corporate think or the way you always done it or the bureaucracy, but really just needs to change the fundamentals right now to get the ball moving?
Yeah. Change is inevitable. Growth is
Yeah.
optional.
So
So that's the whole key, right? Things are going to change. And I think the best leaders are adaptable. And so how can I train the ability to be adaptable? What prevents us from being adaptable? What prevents us from being flexible? Oftentimes it's our egos. So one of the things that I had in my office in Mesa, Arizona, in our spring training home, was a big tapestry of the Hindu god of Ganesh. And what Ganesh's power was the removal of obstacles. And so oftentimes the biggest obstacle is ourselves. So if we can take ourselves out of the equation and we can look at what's best for the organization, what's best for the mission. What is my mission? I would want to know that from a CEO. What is the mission? Then I would also want to know, what are your values? Values are a compass. And oftentimes, if you're working with a company and you ask them what their values are, nobody in the organization knows. It's on every single wall, but
yeah,
nobody knows what they are, right?
yeah,
And I think if you can lead through values and you can emphasize those, oftentimes that work that you did to figure out what those values were can really help that organization thrive. And I think people do get caught up. They get caught up in the numbers. They get caught up in the antiquated tactics. This is the way we've always done it, right? That's the worst phrase you could ever hear in an organization. And they get caught up in their ego. What if? What if it doesn't work? What if it doesn't work? I think about the person who came into Cracker Barrel and they tried to make that change. Remember that?
yeah.
Whatever happened? And it crushed them, right? But what did they
Yeah.
do after they made the mistake? They pivoted right back. They said,
Mhm.
okay, we learned. And I think that was the bigger story than the fact that they tried to change.
That's
What they
key.
did was it didn't boil frogs. They tried to
Mm.
change that thing, boom, immediately, and it was never going to work, right? It was like
Yeah.
this massive pushback because it's Cracker Barrel, man. You want your freaking rocking chair in the little peg game. It's awesome.
Right. Right.
But what they did was they took a step back and they said, okay, that was a mistake, $100 million later, but
Mhm.
hey, let's reset here. And now I'm sure they're still making those changes, but I think they're really incrementally smaller and they're moving forward slower.
Yeah, it's really good. I love that you brought up values. I wrote a book called Quit Losing Talent. The very first chapter in that book is Target Check Your Values. I think that's
Yeah.
one of the most important things we can do is get clear on that, right? That's our moral compass, as you said, going forward. Many organizations start with mission or vision, and we need to make sure we got our values in check first, because that's going to determine how we accomplish that mission or vision that we put out there.
Yep.
Josh, real quick, just what's the one piece of advice you would give? I want to ask two questions. I'll save that question for next. You talk about coaching elite performers. What's the difference in a high performer and an elite performer in as the way you relate and teach that?
Yeah. The elite performer, their time frame for being negative, being unfocused, being distracted is a lot smaller. It's a lot shorter than the good performer. The good, great performers, they're going to get distracted. They're going to get negative. It might take them 3 pitches to get back. The elite performer is back the next pitch. You know,
I love
you,
that.
you know,
I love that because you didn't say they don't deal with that, because they do, right? They
yeah,
can
100%.
his thinking. Yeah,
Absolutely.
absolutely.
Preach, Sam.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Because they care, man. Mike, they
Mm.
care. They care about what happens. They care about success. They care about what they're doing. They have passion, right? You can't be elite without passion. And the elites, when they mess up, they own it and then they move past it really quick.
Yeah, that's really good. Yeah, I love that you said that, because the reality is many people sit around and think, man, I wish I had what Josh had. I wish I could think like Josh thinks. Josh, I bet you have some stuff you have to deal with too between your
Every
ears from
day.
time to time.
Every day.
I think we all do. That was one of the kind of game changers for me, is especially the way I grew up. I wish I had what they had. The reality is maybe I had it better than some people that are getting after it, right? And we never know somebody's history. All we get to see is the highlight reel of their current story most of the time. And everybody's got stuff. I love, and Josh's book is going to help you if you're in a leadership role and you're wanting to move from good, from maybe even great to elite. Maybe pick up a copy of Josh's book and dive into the 6 mental habits that are going to help you stay more focused under pressure. Maybe learn to get to neutral thinking, to start over again at mile zero. Those are three concepts that we've talked about today in Josh's book. Josh, how does someone learn more about you, find out more about you, and also get a copy of the book?
Two things. First of all, any of your listeners, if you have a question for me at all, just get me on LinkedIn and DM me. I swear I'll answer anytime on LinkedIn. I'm on there. I'll absolutely answer your questions. JoshuaLifrak.com, Lifrak, JoshuaLifrak.com. That's my website. On there are the links to all the places you can purchase Win Today, Barnes and Nobles, Amazon. Again, if you're overseas, Waterstones. So any of those, you can get it. You can download it right now too on Kindle. All that's done. The audio book will probably be done by the fall.
Fantastic. Josh, thanks for making time to spend with us today and share with our audience. I hope our audience found some valuable takeaways. I want to make sure you go get a copy of the book. Continue to tune in to Lead Up Podcast. Make sure you connect with Joshua Lifrak. Joshua, is it JoshuaLifrak.com?
Yes, it is. Joshua Lifrak.
JoshuaLifrak.com. Connect with him on LinkedIn. And Josh, thanks for making time today to share with our Lead Up audience. Appreciate you.
Appreciate you, Mike. Appreciate the work you're doing to help keep this world a little bit safer and a little bit healthier.